All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to our asynchronous class video. We're going to go ahead and dive in and get started. But of course, if you have any questions, once you've had a chance to watch the whole thing, please don't be shy. Please reach out to either myself or Erica or Cassidy, and we'll be able to answer those questions for you. And also stay tuned. Keep an eye on that FAQ section on our Brightspace page. We'll be posting questions that we get in there as well. So essentially the plan for this video is I'm going to do a quick recap of our classes so far. Over the course of the semester, those recaps will become less frequent and also less detailed. But as we're starting to build our popular culture vocabulary, it's important to ensure that we're all on the same page by reviewing some of the concepts and theories that we've looked at before. So we're going to start with that recap. And then I'm going to dive right in to Bets and Bly, chapters 4 and 5. So let's start off with that recap. Essentially, coming up to this video, we've started to build our vocabulary, right? So we have about 8 key terms or concepts so far that we've looked at in class. Now, some of these concepts and theories do have other terms that are related. So for example, in order to properly understand what mass culture is, you also need to understand how it connects to mass society theory and the concepts of industrialization and urbanization. But these 8 here that are listed on the slide so far are some of our big 8 terms. So mass culture is most easily defined as popular culture that's produced by industrialized or mechanized techniques of mass production. And it's a culture that is marketed for a mass profit to a mass public. So the keywords there you'll see are kind of in red on the slides. It's criticized for being standardized, formulaic, repetitive, superficial, and homogenous. So essentially, it's argued that mass culture, if we understand popular culture in this way, is all the same. It's not offering us very much as audiences. Now, from this idea of mass culture, which talks about formulas, repetition, homogeneity, we then moved into exploring what Berger was talking about in the concepts of formulas and genres. So Berger's reading that I asked you to do for our class was actually a case study on genres, just like the Friends article was that you read as well. In the context of Berger, he used Westerns as a starting point for identifying elements that make up a genre, or these elements are the formulas that make up a genre. And he did this using Westerns, and then he applied it to other genres like science fiction, detective or crime novels, or mysteries. And he found that they had common elements that you find in fairy tales. It's important to know that Berger's analysis is just one way to think about and approach popular culture or literature, for example, because there are certainly genres in literature or film studies or music. So one of the things that we're looking at together over the course of our semester is different ways to study popular culture, analyzing the formula or elements that make up a genre and then applying them to other genres is one way, and just one way, to do that. The first thing that we did when we looked at genres and formulas was to actually define what they meant. And we saw 2 conflicting definitions in the Berger reading. One definition that emerged from Kalwadi and one that emerged from Berger. For the purpose of our class, we're going to rely on the definition offered by Berger. So he saw genres as conventional systems for structuring cultural products. He argued that they have a narrow set of plots, characters, and settings. And he gave some examples: Westerns, romantic comedies, science fiction, fantasy. These are all examples of genres. Romantic comedies are another example of genres in a very specific field. The formula is the elements or conventions that are found within each genre. So to use a metaphor that we looked at together in our live class, formulas are essentially the ingredients that you need to bake a cake, and the cake is the genre itself. Once we finished that, we talked about some of the ingredients or elements that are found in formulas, and we applied them to a genre that Berger hadn't considered. So again, we applied them to romantic comedies. This is another way that you can construct a research project. Essentially, what we did is we used this framework developed by Berger when he was looking at Westerns, and we applied it to a new genre, so to a gap that exists in the literature, romantic comedies. What we were doing when we were applying it was testing it out. So if there's something that you come across in your readings in this class or in your own research related to popular culture, and you want to apply that to a genre or a topic that hasn't been used yet, that's one way to conduct research in the field of popular culture studies. Now, why do genres matter? The elements of a formula, like the costumes, the locations, the characters, all act as signs or signifiers. These signs allow content creators to quickly and economically, so very efficiently or financially, establish a genre and attract audiences. On the other side, they also create audience expectations. So while the elements of a genre can be shifted around, we call this variation, too many changes can actually alienate or confuse audiences. Finally, we saw Berger's contribution to this larger conversation. So in addition to testing out this framework and to clarifying the definition or offering a new definition of genre, what Berger also does is argue that fairy tales and fairy tale narratives, so by narratives we mean stories, plots, all the things that make up this genre or the formula. Fairy tales are the first genres that we encounter. He also argued that they're the starting point for many other genres. As an example, he said that fairy tales see heroes overcome adversity. They see heroes confront an evil force, fall in love, and live happily ever after. And we see all of these elements of the narratives in Westerns, in detective stories, in science fiction novels, and even in superhero movies. If you're a fan of the Avengers series, you see this sometimes within each individual movie, as well as over the course of the entire universe. If you follow, for example, the plot line of Iron Man, we see a lot as a character, not as just the film, we see a lot of these elements there. And then lastly, we also talked about what came first. That is, whether popular culture influences our everyday life or whether everyday life influences popular culture. So what order does the circle operate in? Does it operate in multiple directions? This is a theme that we're going to continue today and over much of our time together. So that is where we left off in our live class in Berger. Now, moving in to Betts and Bly, and in particular chapters 4 and 5 of their much larger book, we start to look at the concepts of the image and the stage, concepts that are also related to much of what we'll continue to look at in our course. So Betts and Bly argue that the image is the principal medium by which popular culture is expressed, and that the making of images is in fact a major industry. And they give a whole bunch of different examples, and we can also think about together or separately some examples of where we find images. These include on television, films, in art, in comics, on Instagram and other forms of social media, including Snapchat. Logos are another example of images that exist. Tinder and many online dating sites also feature the image prominently. Video games are another example of moving images. So coming back to what Betts and Bly were saying, the image is everywhere. Now, they argue that the visual in all of its different forms is the principal medium by which popular culture is expressed. And so remember that the visual and the image are related. The image is, in fact, one form of the visual. It all started with the movie theater. This is because the image or the screened visual experience democratized culture. So essentially, what happened is movie theaters made what had been previously restricted, just the regular theater where you would go and watch people perform live in a play or some kind of story, into something that was more commonplace. So not everybody had access to the live theater. However, movie theaters were much more accessible. Movie theaters have also been referred to as palaces of distraction. And this is because they offer audiences a form of escapism. And outside of COVID, we know this is actually going to revolutionize the movie theater industry, and there's a lot of work being done in this area right now. It's a new area of popular culture research, or a developing area of popular culture research. But normally, before COVID, you could still go to a movie theater for 2 or 3 hours, sit in the dark, probably not on your phone, and it kind of felt like being at home. So in this way, technology made the image much more accessible. Again, this is changing with COVID. It is having an impact on how the movie viewing experience is going to occur going forward. But up until COVID, we would have said the movie theater led to movie rentals, which led to things like television movie channels and pay-per-view, which has now led to Netflix. So the impact of COVID on the movie viewing industry is going to be the next shift in this trend. But essentially, what is being demonstrated here by Betts and Bly is that technological changes have made the image much more accessible. First, it was the theater, then movie theaters, and now we can watch movie theaters in our home. Bringing the image into our homes brings it within arm's reach. So it actually brings it closer to us. Now, in addition to the method of viewing images, we also saw changes to the form of the content and the emergence of new genres and subgenres that became increasingly image focused. And animation and the rise of animation is one example of that. So to get a better understanding of how the images create animation, we're going to watch this short video.
Just how was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs created? And how are the famous Disney short films made? To give you the answer, we take you behind the closed doors of the famed Walt Disney Studio in Hollywood. Doors usually barred to all visitors. During the past 3 years, the studio staff has grown from less than 300 to more than 700 artists and musicians. They worked in shifts, night and day, to complete this unique experiment in entertainment. Remember as a kid how you made your own movies by drawing little figures on the pages of a pad and flipping the pages to make the figures move? That's the basic principle behind animated pictures today. But that's not all there is to it. First, you need a story. Thinking up funny stories is the job of Walt Disney's writers, gag men, and sketch artists. After much trial and error, several hundred rough drawings illustrating the high points of each story are completed. Let's follow the story into conference, where Walt Disney and his hard-boiled directors look it over. Not a picture, long or short, goes into production without Walt's personal okay. Next, a director whips the script and dialogue into final form. Then he calls in his assistants, including his musical composer, and plans the score of the picture. timing out each scene carefully. He even acts out every move of the action so that the men who work with him can visualize what the scene will look like on the screen. Now he sets his expert animators to work, the skilled artists who draw every movement in complete detail, just as you will see it in the theater. Each animator's drawing board is lighted from below. He looks through the paper at the character he has previously outlined and draws the next movement in correct position. This clever animator is using a mirror to capture a tricky facial expression like this. Let's move along to the test camera department. Here the animator's rough drawings are photographed in sequence, one at a time. This film is developed and returned to the animator, who checks to see how good it is by running it in a small projection machine called a moviola. In this moviola, as the animator runs his film backward and forward, we catch a graceful glimpse of the screen's newest heroine, Snow White herself. Now we're in one of the studio projection rooms, where Walt and his staff study the rough animation of a sequence about the 7 lovable little dwarfs. Once they are okayed, the thousands of pencil drawings go to the inking department. Here, hundreds of pretty girls in a comfortable building, all their own, well lighted, air conditioned throughout, cover the drawings with sheets of transparent celluloid. Then they painstakingly trace every line of every drawing in ink, following exactly in every detail the original animation drawings. Now the picture moves into its final stage, color. In the studio paint laboratory, all colors used are made up from secret formulas. Expert chemists develop more than 1,500 different shades of color for Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. The ink celluloids next go to the painting department, where more pretty girls apply the final colors on the back. Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs required 250,000 celluloids painted like this one. In another department of the big Disney studio, artists delicately paint the beautiful stage settings for the picture. These backgrounds are done in watercolor. Artists work for months on backgrounds like the interior of the 7 Dwarfs cottage. But the colossal task isn't finished even yet. The celluloids and backgrounds must still be photographed by the master camera in Technicolor. Here the operator puts a Donald Duck celluloid on top of a background as the overhead camera exposes one frame of film. To photograph Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs, this operation had to be repeated more than 500,000 times. Next, the film passes into the hands of technicians, and the sound effects are recorded. Finally, a symphony orchestra records the musical score, the hit tunes that will thrill listeners the world over. Now comes a crucial moment, the picture's world premiere in Hollywood. Crowds flock to see an animation exhibit set up outside the theater.
All right, so one of the things that we saw in this video was
Just how was Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs created?
Was image manipulation and how it occurs on a large scale. So in the sense that those images or the Snow White story was pieced together by making very tiny changes or image manipulation and weaving those together. This led to...
Just how was Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs created?
This led to a rise in animation. Snow White very much set the standard for animation when it was created. And then over time, we saw the rise and import of anime and the increase in cartoons and animated stories, more widely speaking. Now, animation is equivalent to, or the precursor to, modern CGI or modern computer-generated images, because that is also about image manipulation. Essentially, using CGI and arguably using more traditional forms of animation, creators are able to duplicate realistic altered scenes, like having people with dinosaurs in the film Jurassic Park. That's an example of CGI that creates a altered scene, so a different form of altered reality. Retroscopy, also known as object cloning, is what we see there. So retroscopy refers to where a visual alteration allows a person or a scene, like a movie scene or a setting in a photo, to be smoothly melded. It creates a sequence where a person from one era can be spliced into a situation or filmed and photographed at a different time. In addition, another example of this is the colorization of black and white films. So many films that were shot in black and white are now also available in Technicolor or other forms of color. That is also a form of retroscopy because they're altering the initial image. Baudrillard, a very famous theorist, argues that this is an example of the hyperreal. So it creates a situation where audiences are not able to distinguish reality from a simulation of reality. And the two images that are on the slide kind of demonstrate that here. One of them is from the actual film Jurassic Park, and another is from a meme, and it features a dinosaur from the television show Dinosaurs rather than from Jurassic Park. But the rest of the scene is the same as was in the original film Jurassic Park, and it's difficult to see apart from the username in the meme, which one is the original and which one has been manipulated or created. This essentially raises questions with regards to authenticity. It changes our way of seeing art. It asks us to consider whether authenticity matters. So think about Instagram, for example. Digitally altered photos often leave no evidence or no trace. So using filters, we are very familiar as users of social media of what filters there are available. In fact, there are many songs that are out there, like Selfie by the Chainsmokers, that talks about what filters are the best filters to use. And yet everybody does it. And so this starts to get us thinking, doesn't matter that we filter the majority of our photos. Does anyone actually post a photo without a filter? Yes, I know there is a hashtag no filter that exists, but who's using it? And how do we know if they have or have not applied a filter? So again, think about how something like that impacts authenticity. If we are literally filtering ourselves in this online world in this way, what does that mean? What are the implications for that? And that's a really good segue into kind of the end of chapter 4, which brings us into chapter 5. But Betts and Bly essentially argue that the contemporary world can be defined as one of carefully constructed appearances, so images, and exhibitions or performances. These images and performances, like Instagram filters, shape reality and define the person. They argue that our interaction and daily encounter with images is unescapable, whether those images are a source of information or entertainment. They also say that popular culture is one of the gazes or collective displays that exists. Why does this matter? They argue it's led to a sponsored life. So everything becomes a sales pitch for the places that we go, for the clothes that we wear, for ourselves. Pictorial communication, so images, dominate social and public spaces. Whether they're artistic, they're there again and again. And logos and emblems, that associate us with these brands, with logos, with places. They're signs of these products, and we identify ourselves or associate with these signs, and by extension, with the products and lifestyles that are perpetuated and encouraged by these signs. And we, in effect, become unpaid advertising for a product. In so doing, we allow our bodies, our identities, and ourselves to be put on display. And this ties in with what Betts and Bly were talking about with regards to customs, costumes, bikinis, bodybuilding, Playboy magazine, tattoos, cosmetics, plastic surgery. They say that that's all about our appearances. And if we agree with that, then our bodies essentially become an art medium. They're malleable, so they can be manipulated. They're capable of being aesthetically dominated and formed the way that clay is formed by pottery. Betts and Bly argue, and this is kind of like the important piece here, that products have become personality defining or personality enhancing, allowing the user or the wearer to become more than they would be without them. So by associating ourselves with a brand or a logo, like a product or an activity like bodybuilding, we gain entrance to a group distinguished by that product. And we're going to come back to this when we look at Grossberg's reading on identity and media making. This idea is going to tie in very heavily with the poster or video presentation that you're going to be asked to do later in our course. But for now, start thinking about the products or logos that you associate yourself with. Start thinking about the images or performances that you engage in. That's a good place to start thinking about that assignment. Betts and Bly say that images are the currency of celebrity. And we're going to talk about celebrity more in a later class. Essentially, for now, think about the idea that it's a condition of numbers. So partially has to do with the frequency of representation. But Betts and Bly say that the celebrity, or maybe the pseudo celebrity, becomes an image on screen and in print. They're strategically positioned or arranged as part of some kind of pseudo event. The pseudo event is, again, another concept that we're going to be coming back to over the course of this semester. Essentially, it has the appearance of something real and significant, but is intended and planned, so staged, and dramatically unfolded or performed. The Instagram photos that I had up in the previous slide are examples of that. They are super intentional. They were super staged. I knew that I was wearing a weights before dates shirt before I went to the gym. I intentionally took a photo of myself there. That's the staging, and that's the performed. Does that mean that it's not real or not significant? These are things that we can talk about as we move throughout the course, and they're things to think about in your own lives as well. Other examples of the pseudo event include celebrity tell-alls, potentially celebrities interacting on Instagram with users. Those contacts or connections are arguably heavily vetted. They might be controlled by a publicist. Celebrities being caught off guard is potentially another example of a pseudo event. People being voted off of reality television shows and then ending up on a talk show related to that the next day is a pseudo event as well. Aspects of it are certainly staged and performed, even if there is some nuances there, or some of it that you can't script everything. So how much is scripted? How much is authentic? If it's scripted, is it any less authentic? These are questions to think about, and always think about the implications of those conclusions. If we determine that this performance is inauthentic, what does that mean? So Betts and Bly, in addition to arguing that we're living in a world of the image and that the image is the most common form, most important form of popular culture, they also argue that we're living in an age of the spectacle, and they connect that to the image. So the spectacle or spectacularization refers to the ways that activities and places are set up or rearranged to assure maximum entertainment. And they give some examples of the spectacle. So they talk about political conventions, they talk about theme parks, rock concerts, sporting events as examples of the spectacle. Tourism is another one that we're going to come back to again later on in the semester. Press conferences, there are lots of examples of the spectacle. If you start to think about the definition of staging and rearranging, everything is scripted and it's carefully thought out. So here in the bottom corner, we see a photo of a press conference from the Government of Ontario during COVID-19. And you'll notice that all of the officials that are present at the press conference are spaced out. That is intentional. It doesn't make it authentic or inauthentic. The context was and is COVID-19 pandemic, social distancing. That's one of the messages that comes across here. But what other messages exist? And if this placement is intentional, what does that mean for authenticity? Now, a press conference is one example of the spectacle. A rock concert is another one. And even though they're both spectacular in their own ways, they also contain different elements of the spectacle. One is more flashy, one a little bit more subdued. So there are some distinctions between spectacles. If we're talking about genres, for example, this could be a place to apply genre theory. I think we've seen enough of Rammstein. So the spectacle occurs in any kind of concert situation. This is one genre of music concerts, but you could certainly argue that in other genres such as dance music, when you have dancers on stage, or if you have a band that does dancing, that is also staged. It's rehearsed, it's arranged, everybody has routines and placements. The concert, the rock concert in this case, is strategically packaged. Everything from the lighting to the pyrotechnics to the costumes to the makeup. Rammstein is known for their rather outrageous attire and visual effects, as well as some of the storylines that go running. You can see here the wings in the song Angle. Every piece of this has been rehearsed and practiced. I would argue, especially when there's pyrotechnics, because it could get a little risky, right? So think about the spectacle as being packaged and strategically prepared. Think about the implications of that for authenticity. As a Rammstein fan, I know what I'm getting when I go to see them in concert next summer, COVID pending. I expect this. And so this also ties in with formula, audience expectations, and genre. Similarly, if you like boy bands, you know what you're getting when you go to see boy bands in concerts. There are certain types of the spectacle that always exist. And so entertainment, broadly speaking, whether that be something like a concert or even a marathon or some other kind of experience, Betts and Bly argue has become a new industry and a new aspect of popular culture. And this is the connection to tourism. Tourism as performance is a subset or subgenre of what has now become a major industry. Essentially, it allows both momentary escape from the routine and day-to-day life, and it also allows us to experience heritage. Or does it? I've chosen to include some images from when I was traveling a few summers ago in Turkey. And so the cultural optimist, again, connecting back to concepts and theoretical perspectives that we look at, would say yes. Tourism gives us the opportunity to experience the antique, the exotic, the long gone, and the far away. Tourism allows us to experience different types of culture. It makes them more accessible. The critiques of this would disagree. So cultural pessimists who would view tourism and all of the construction of the spectacle that occurs in tourism as a form of mass culture say that it results in the commodification of the past. They would also criticize tourism as a form of cultural imperialism and a form of exploitation. This occurs, or this criticism perspective arises from the idea that only those with disposable income are able to engage in tourist experiences. There's room for the debate there. Yes, you can only certain people can afford to travel and afford to go to these different places, but you can also experience tourism in your backyard. So we're seeing, again, different subgenres of tourism as an industry in popular culture. Cultural pessimists would also say that tourism subjects institutions and local populations to the gaze and to the service of those who are more well off. In addition, these spaces have been specifically arranged, so staged, like the spectacle, for Western gaze. They argue that what we're experiencing here is kind of a show and tell. Now, like other types of popular culture, there are genres of tourism: sports tourism, fantasy tourism, historical tourism, ecotourism, and adventure tourism.
Right, and Jen, good morning. Welcome to Skydive Switzerland.
Oh, good morning.
How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good, thank you. So tell your friends and family back home what you're going to do today.
I'm skydiving this morning.
First time?
First time.
Nervous?
A little.
Okay,
Is
also
that normal?
excited. Yeah, that's normal. That's part of the game.
Okay.
Huh? Okay, you know what? Before we go, I will check your equipment.
Okay.
Huh? Yeah, I think that should work, huh?
I hope so.
A little bit loose, that one here. Who gave you that harness?
It was that gentleman there.
That guy over there. Ooh, don't trust him. No, it's all good.
Okay.
We make it tidy for you later, okay?
Okay, yeah.
Hey, keep that smile and I see you up there in the sky.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
All right, so thank you for watching this video, and we're not done yet, but I meant this skydiving video in particular. As I hope that you have seen from the video, everything about this event is staged and rearranged. First and foremost, I would say for safety reasons, but the jokes that are made, the guys that do this make similar jokes with many of their clients to create a certain type of experience. And you can think about how this might happen on a smaller, more localized scale. Many fitness instructors, for example, have a certain kind of experience that they encourage in their classes. They use certain language to create a certain type of personality or persona. And it's also staged, performed, and rearranged. And just like television and film tourism and adventure tourism, it all involves some kind of spectacle. Betts and Bly argue that cruise ships are kind of the epitome of this phenomena, and that's why we're going to come back to cruise ships a little bit later in this course. To close the loop, Betts and Bly say that the image itself also constitutes performance. And they use news broadcasts, reality TV, and sports broadcasts to illustrate this. All of these types of television programs have a stage. So in the context of sports, it could be a basketball court. That is the stage where that occurs. Frame, staged, arranged, and presented. Modern entertainment, and by extension, popular culture, is an industrialized product. In that sense, modern entertainment is both a spectacle and the spectacular. In addition to all of this criticism surrounding the spectacle and all the questions that are raised with regards to authenticity and the cultural optimist and cultural pessimist perspectives that we've been talking about with the spectacle and with tourism, I would also argue that the image can move us, it can engage us, and it can inspire us.
I'm glad you're back. I imagine it's going to take some time getting used to. You just got to get yourself back out there.
Palmer, you were all USA player 2 years in a row at Riverside?
Yes, sir. A whole lot's changed.
That boy, that's Sam. His mama took off. He'll be staying with us till she's back.
You know you're a boy, right?
Yeah.
In the hours that I've known.
Do you know when my mom is coming back?
He's gonna have to go in the system.
There's something seriously wrong with that kid.
Would you set me free?
How did you end up in prison?
Don't matter. I did what I did.
Spoke of what you did today.
And there's nowhere to hide.
Listen to me, son. Kids are mean, especially when they see something that they ain't used to seeing.
You ain't nothing but a criminal. You got no right looking after any child.
There's things in this world you can be, and there's things that you can't. How many boys do you see on that show?
None.
What does that tell you?
That I can be the first. Trick or treat!
Ah, get some treats.
Truth is, I haven't felt like I was good at anything until Sam.
Keep running till we learn to find peace.
Shelly came back.
Keep running till we learn to find peace.
Hey! You couldn't stay out of trouble, could you?
Can't abandon that boy. I will not abandon that boy.
Heard y'all had a little tea party the other day.
Yeah.
Careful, Palmer. It's hot. Pinkies, please.
Real good.
Where do we wrap up today? Betts and Bly talk about how the image is everywhere. And again, even video games and films are a series of moving images. The image and popular culture is therefore pervasive. It is everywhere. They argue that the alteration of an image, broadly understood, raises questions with regards to authenticity. The trailer from the film that we just watched is altered. It's carefully staged, carefully constructed. It's a spectacle. Every scene has been carefully thought out, edited, filmed from the best angle. In this sense, modern entertainment is both a spectacle and a spectacular. Now, they also note that spectacularization has been around for a long time. It's just a frequency that has changed and increased. In closing, start to think about your life, your everyday life, and the places where you might perform. Think about the images that you see in person, online, in popular culture, the meanings that we take away from them. Those things will be helpful not only for this course and for the purpose of the poster and video presentation assignment, but hopefully more long-term. If you guys have any questions about today's material or today's video, please reach out. Please don't be shy. Cassidy, myself, or Erica are available to answer those questions. Thank you so much, and I will see you next Wednesday.